welcome, Jeffrey.
Thank you.
Pleasure having you here for our Founders Series podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us for a half hour, and I look forward to conversation about your company and your story. I want to give just a word of thanks to our sponsor, Sudden Impact, here in Columbus, as they're helping us with this series, and will be the part of the publishing arm for the podcast. You can listen to yourself soon in the near future. And for those listening, Jeffrey Price is the founder and CEO of Plan Logistics here in Columbus, Ohio. And we're going to be talking about, on the series, we talk markets, we talk leadership, innovation, technology, partnerships, all the things that go into business formation and execution, but through the lens of the founder's eyes. Yes. Through the lens of the CEO. And there's frankly so much noise out there with the social sphere of everyone can create content, and it becomes a little noisy. It becomes hard for sometimes founders to connect with the right audience.
Right.
You can easily feel lost in all of the content, and sort of making those right connections with the right people is elusive. So, we're hoping that through helping you tell your story and those who listen to your story, that there can form a good connection and a good fit of the people that, we all need people to help push our ideas forward and help us move towards our version of what success means for your company. Yes. So that's the hope of the show. And thank you for being here. So
thank you. I appreciate you for having me. And with the company being in logistics and supply chain, I like to say it's almost like tug of war, in that if you want to pull something across the finish line, you have to work as a team, you have to cooperate, and you have to invest in people. So I appreciate the teamwork and you helping me pull my way to success, and others as well. So thank you.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure. I find stories like yours are intriguing. They're compelling. They're fascinating, and we don't tell them and slow down enough to hear them. So that being said, why don't you give us a sense of how you came to be the founder of Plan Logistics? Where have you been? What have you been up to the last few years? What's been instrumental? How did you get where you're at today?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, and I like to start with PLAN is actually an acronym for Performance Logistics Action Network. So simply, performance is who we are. That's the act of execution. Logistics is what we do. We take simply a person, place, thing, or idea and take it from point A to point B. Action is what we take, and network is what we bring. So essentially, we're a third-party logistics company, meaning we take a shipper such as Walmart and connect them with Kyle's Trucking, for example, and then we make margin in between. And third-party logistics is the future of transportation right now. As far as the bigger companies go, for them to outsource that aspect of their business, they get an immediate return on investment as far as a specialized knowledge and talent base. And that's where we see the trend is going now, to where even the bigger and major companies around the United States and globally, they all are using third-party logistics to help their supply chain moving forward.
And is that for those who don't operate in logistics, or that's an unfamiliar industry or space, what do you mean by third-party logistics?
So third-party would essentially be just an outside source, almost like a consultation services. So instead of us being directly connected with Walmart, for example, they hire us and bring us on the outside with those specialized relationships where we have. And similar to where, you work with an insurance broker or a real estate broker, because they have those specialized networks and connectors in the industry. A freight brokerage, which is what we are, we're able to connect a shipper to carriers that can specify their complex supply chain needs for transportation.
Oh, I see. And where did your interest in logistics come from?
Wow. So this journey kind of goes back around probably about 10 to 15 years ago. It's kind of amazing how life can just put you in those situations in the way that God can open doors for you. So back in when I was in ninth grade, kind of have to go all the way back there. I'm 35 now, but when I was 13, 9/11 happened. I remember being specifically in Spanish class, watching the towers fall and thinking to myself, I want to be able to give back to the country. So from that, I always had it in my heart to join the military. And that's kind of where the logistics company started. When I was 24, I was just getting out of college, and, my background is in organizational communications with a minor in marketing. And as we hear, some of those degrees really don't make much right out of college. So at that point, I already started a family and, $30,000-$40,000 a year with 2 kids and want to send them to private schools. It just wasn't going to cut it. So I was like, hey, it's always been on my heart to give back to this country. My grandfather was a Vietnam vet. So ever since that moment, we've always wanted to give back to the military and to the country that way. So I joined the Army, and the job that I landed based off my ASVAB score was a transportation management coordinator. So when I look back, it's like, wow, like this was my way to get in. And went to the Army Transportation School in 2012. As soon as I got back, I was in the reserve component. I'm like, okay, I'm able to give back, get some student loans repaid. But they said, hey, you need to deploy to Afghanistan. So I'm like, wow, this is about to get real. I didn't really expect to have to actually deploy, but that was just really a door that opened up to me, really how big transportation logistics really is on a global scale. Because once I got to Afghanistan, I got to immediately see the impact we have, because my mission was to help downsize Afghanistan. So, this is when President Obama was in office. We're pulling out, closing down military bases. And our whole mission was to help close those down, help get resources shipped out of Afghanistan, back across Africa, United States, just out of that military zone. And through that experience, I gained the confidence. The military kind of boosted my leadership skills, that I was able to really step out of my comfort zone. The military has a great way of forcing you to be a leader. And that's really what confidence is, being in uncomfortable situations and rising above it.
I'm just listening to that part of your story. Going from, sending something from Columbus to Cleveland seems like eyes closed finger roll compared to evacuating from Afghanistan, right? Yeah. I mean, maybe not. I'm sure Route 71 is, fraught with all kinds of danger getting aside. But, what was it like? Like, that seems like a massive thing to do, to evacuate a military operation from a country.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great point. And I think as far as where we go as leadership and entrepreneurs, kind of being able to look back at key milestones that you've achieved before you start a business or before you step out on faith to pursue those endeavors is to really look back at what you've already accomplished. So even now, as being a small business and starting up, I can always look back at those moments and say, oh, it's really not that bad. Mm-hmm. The military kind of teaches you about, misery loves company. But if you're in good company, then those trials and tribulations, they feel good. And it really builds a brotherhood or a family structure.
Yeah, for sure. Tell me a little bit more about that. The people that you walk with, the people that have helped you launch this company from a leadership perspective. Who are some of those top voices who have inspired you, encouraged you, and sort of given you that social network and social capital to go launch this?
Yeah. So, I'd like to say everybody's journey into entrepreneurship or starting a business is different. Some people have investors. Some people use their own capital. Some people rely on family. But for me, I started the company in 2020. I was working at a large automotive manufacturer at the time. So kind of circling back, when I got back from Afghanistan, the door opened for me to work at an automotive manufacturer out in Marysville, to where I was in charge of global supply chain. So now literally I went from what I did in the military to doing on the civilian sector. So with that door, I was able to travel the world, go to India, go to different countries to where automotive parts were being made there. And then they were being produced in those countries. So getting that vision or being able to see the impact on global logistics and how, If they don't get their product overseas, their whole country is shut down. Now you have somebody that lives in India or England or South America to where maybe they don't have the same resources we do in the United States. And now they can't go to work or feed their families. So that's really what put that passion in my heart to say, hey, you should really start this business. So circling back to your initial question, in 2020, everybody was furloughed. It was COVID. A lot of people were out of work, and I was able to still work. They furloughed everybody in North America except maybe about 50 people who were part of the global supply chain because, as you know, Kyle, COVID kind of hit different countries at different times. Yeah. So, when the United States was down, China was still running, because they got hit first before we did. Yeah. So through that experience, I realized, man, if I'm getting trusted with $1 billion decisions at home, then maybe I should go back and start my own business that I've always been on my heart for years since I came back from Afghanistan. So when I launched in 2020, I had a real spiritual moment. Maybe you're familiar with the book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
I'm not. Educate me.
Yeah.
I'm all ears.
It's really a great book as far as changing the mindset of an entrepreneur, really getting out of that poverty style mindset that says that, hey, I was born in this situation. I'm stuck in this situation. This is all I can be, right? It's almost like if my mom didn't accomplish this, I'm not going to accomplish anything. And almost like it changes your mindset to not think of just because it was this way, it has to be this way. So that's what the book is pretty much about, just changing the mind and just thinking and looking at things differently. And for me, my family, my mother immigrated from Panama back when she was 20, came over through my grandfather who served in Vietnam, met my grandmother in Panama. So that's how we came to the United States. And my dad is from the middle of nowhere, Bluefield, West Virginia. So we didn't come from a lot. So that book helped to open my mind to say, just because you were born in these situations doesn't mean that you have to live out the situations. And especially with America being the land of the free, the home of the brave, really everybody here does have an opportunity to succeed. It's just all about the steps that you personalize and take towards success. So that's how I got pretty much started, is reading that book, opening my mind to it. And as far as the investors and capital, when I wrote my business plan, I was pitching it to investors, but, unfortunately, I got shut down because investors felt like I paid people too much. I don't have my own trucks. I rely on Kyle's trucking to move the loads. Yeah. So they said I pay Kyle too much for it to be a profitable business. So I literally took a step out of faith, took out a home equity line of credit, and utilized my 401k to start the business.
It's not an uncommon path. Many founders put all of their resources behind their idea. And it probably crystallized your thinking at that moment when you made the 401k request. It tests do I believe in me? Do I believe in this idea? Things come into focus in those moments when your mind goes to your past and your experience, and can I do this, and the skills, and you take that leap, and there's an aspect of faith in that. I think I'm not sure how much you're willing to share, but briefly, what is, I don't know if it was that moment or another, what's the intersection of faith and work to you? Because we live in a society where we've grown up in a world of science, and material is all there is. And, the Southern hemisphere and the Eastern hemisphere of the world, other parts of the world, they never let go of the sacred, or they never put the divide between the sacred and the secular. Yes. And I think it's being recovered in our country. But what was that experience for you? And can you share anything on that front?
Yeah. That's probably the most exciting part of the journey, where people say I'm really brave and courageous now. It's because, when I was reading that book, I had a real come to Jesus moment, as they would say in the boardrooms, to where literally my life flashed before my eyes. And, I like to define vision as, foresight with insight based on hindsight. So I was able to see in foresight, like, this is the future that God had for me, with insight to see the current problems with transportation And with hindsight, to see that all those doors that I went through as far as being in the military, deploying to Afghanistan, were really God's plan for my life. So, I mean, really, Kyle, when I had that life flashing before my eyes, if anybody's ever been in a car accident or anything like that to where they've had that experience, you know, you kind of get a realigned focus on what's really important. So, you know, at that point, you know, I went from maybe a casual Christian, so to say, to where I grew up in the church, went to church here and there, to where I was sold out. You know, I sold out so much that I had to go to marital counseling, where my wife was like, I don't even know who I married anymore, because I went on, you know, a whole spree of the music I listened to, the way I talked, the way I dressed. Everything just changed overnight, because I realized that God is real and it's a personal relationship. So even in my business, you know, it's called Plan, and it's literally not my plan. It's God's plan for my life that I'm just walking out. And in our logo, there's an A pointing up to the heavens, just to give that salutation that this is his business and I'm just stewarding what he gave me.
Appreciate you sharing that. It's obviously a huge part of who you are today. It's a huge part of the company that you're building, the types of relationships that you form, and what forms that connection between you and everyone in the world, you know, that you travel within, and the people you work with, your wife, your kids, your family, your employees. You know, speak to some of the challenges that founders face. So you've got this foundation, you've got these roots in your faith, in your family, in your, you know, in the military, that anchor you down, that say, I can do this, I can weather these storms. You know, COVID hit, tough time. Capital markets have taken a hard downturn this year, tough time. There's pressures, internal and external, all the time. Talk to me about what have you learned as a founder navigating those challenges? How do you, what do you think are the challenges facing business owners?
I would say, you know, the biggest challenge, whether that you're providing a service or providing a product, is letting people know you exist. You know, we kind of undervalue marketing, so to speak. And that's why I appreciate you for building this platform and letting people know about businesses that are out there, because, you know, you can have a cure to world hunger or anything that's a major global problem, but if nobody knows about it, then it's not going to do anything. So I think for me, the biggest hurdle was, you know, I have the military awards where I graduated 100% on every test from the Army Transportation School, have the background for working at a Japanese auto manufacturer, but nobody knows me. So, you know, I found the biggest way was just really building relationships with people. Mm-hmm. You know, I try to set a goal for myself to take somebody out to eat once a week. You know, little things like that make a big difference long term. And I do a lot of my marketing on LinkedIn. You know, I'm in business to business sales. So really just being consistent on LinkedIn, reaching out to people and letting them know the man behind the monitor, so to speak. Because at the end of the day, you can go with any service provider you want to, but people invest in people. And if you're passionate about your product, you believe in it, you're fiery about it, other people will catch on to your flame as well.
Sure. Jeffrey, tell me, you mentioned marketing, the undervalued or just the overlooked need and necessity of making those connections and getting your story out there to the right people. And you're right, it is hard. How have you seen technology help you with that, solving that as an owner, either for marketing or technology for the sake of operational effectiveness within the logistics operations? What technology are you using? What do you hope to use in the future? I don't know. I'm not deep in the logistics space, so I don't know how embedded and central technology is to, you know, running a brokerage and delivering things on time. But I would assume that it's a hot, ripe space for innovation and differentiation if the right technology partnerships are in place. Can you speak to what your perspective is there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the strategy that I did was I automated my LinkedIn profile. So essentially, I partnered with a software company that they gave me the platform to where they're able to kind of pre-select messages that I write to. So say, for example, message one might say, "Hey, Kyle, my name is Jeffery. I'm looking to connect with other logistics managers," because that's my target audience. You know, wait a couple of days and then it'll send another automated message along the lines of, "Hey, thanks for the connection. Hope that we can build a relationship. If anyone in my network piques your interest, let me know and glad to bridge the connection. So now I'm offering something, because that's kind of like the key to networking is you have to almost give first, and then people are more receptive. And then the third message might be along the lines of here's a little bit of my background and testimony. Fourth message is like a link to my video or to my YouTube page. And then fifth message, et cetera, up to 7 messages over like a 2 to 3 week period. So that automation has really helped my business grow because even now that we're speaking, my profile is automatically reaching out to my target audience. So that's helped me grow tremendously very fast. And say, for example, you do respond to one of my messages, then a kill switch is initiated and I'm able to speak myself and then we just engage in a normal conversation. But because I've handwritten all the messages myself, they don't sound salesy because I like to say I'm a horrible salesman, but I'm an excellent serviceman, right? So that's just the whole military component in what we do. That's as far as the marketing aspect and what's helped me a lot as far as technology goes. And then as far as the logistics company goes, the brokerage, we do own our transportation management software. So that was the biggest investment. That was $100,000 to purchase that software. But my vision overall is to give other people's opportunity in this industry, right? Pioneering and groundbreaking is extremely hard. But, now that I've paved the way, I have business credit and things of that nature. Now where I see plan growing into is similar to like Nationwide or State Farm, to where those insurance companies, which are brokerages as well, you have big corporate State Farm, big corporate Nationwide, but you also have the mom and pop Nationwide franchises maybe in local neighborhoods. And that's where I see plan growing into as a transportation provider. So making that initial investment of $100,000 into our transportation management software, now we're able to own those licenses to where if Kyle wanted to start his own brokerage under my motor carrier authority, which is what you need to do business and transportation in the United States, now you can start your own franchise. And that to me really opens up the door to where a lot of people suffer in traditional, big business or companies is, once you reach a certain level, you kind of plateau, you kind of got to wait for such and such to retire to keep ascending up the corporate ladder to where now it's like, hey, if you're killing it, you're doing really well. Hey, just go ahead and start your own franchise. I'll bless you. You go do your own thing. And we just have a different relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you've solved some unique challenges with technology and made investments into operations that they don't have to reinvent, you're thrusting them out the gate with a speed and a momentum, and frankly, maybe things that they don't have interest in doing themselves.
Yes.
A lot of business owners start things and then find that they hate their work because so much of it is administrative. And they thought, I didn't think this is what owning a business would be like. And so I think that's really where the value of the franchise model comes into play. It's brand, momentum, it's operational scale.
Yes.
And if you can quantify that and take whatever you do during this early stage period and put it in a nice package that someone would be willing to pay a fee because that's what they're paying for.
Right.
I'm paying to buy something that I can't do myself.
Yes, exactly.
Or faster than I could do it myself. Yes. And I just don't want to spend the 10 years because Jeffrey already did it. Yes. I only got 5 years left to work. So I'll take your 10 plus my 5.
And you brought up a good point. I like to say that for this model, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I just have to change the tire, so to speak. So when you change a tire, what do? You rotate them, right? So sometimes you need to rotate leadership and put somebody else in that position with a franchise model. Sometimes you need to put new air in the model in the tire so it rides smoother, or just change the tire altogether so you have different traction. But all that has to do with just, you don't have to reinvent something that's already in place. So that's what I encourage to people who have a service-based business is don't overthink it. Just change the tire. Don't reinvent the wheel and put your own unique personality behind it.
Yeah. I love your story because it's hopeful to a lot of aspiring business owners, young people, high schoolers coming up. My daughter's in high school. So I'm thinking, and my boys, that will follow soon behind. What will they do? What would they be interested in? Not everything has to be transformative IP.
Right.
groundbreaking, going to the moon. It can be exactly what you just said. A passion to do something that the world needs, already uses, but just do it better.
Yes.
And those improvements in service, hugely valuable if you can treat your clients and deliver on time, or you know what I mean? It's an improvement to the way it happens, and that becomes your brand.
Yes.
And your story.
Yes. Thank you.
We're running towards the close here. I have one final question for you, coming back to you, because well, let me put it this way. Most founders have an inclination towards a type. They start off as inventor, creative. Mm-hmm. I'm at 0 and I need to have an idea. Let's go do A, B. So you have inventor, you have once it's launched, you turn it, you have to become an operator.
Right.
And the wheels are turning on the machine. Yeah. As you scale, you must become a manager if you're to be successful and get work done through others.
Yep.
And coach them and develop them. And then if you get to that phase where things have become much bigger and the plate of opportunities is sort of having a multiplier effect, those leaders have to become more visionary. Mm-hmm. They less doing, more time, what we're doing right now, speaking. It's sort of a return back to their roots as inventor, but it's more than inventor, because there's all these people that you've brought along with you. Maybe it's 100 franchisees across the country. Maybe it's 1,000 employees. Maybe it's 50 different partnerships, but they're all looking at you. And so visionary becomes very like, what next, Jeffrey? Why are we here? Yes. Why do we keep following? That alone, trying to be good at inventor, operator, manager, visionary in one person is very difficult.
Right.
So I'm asking, have you ever given thought to, and it's okay that we don't have to be all things, but which one of those resonates most with you as your natural best fit? And which one of those would you go find someone else to say, I need to hire him someday?
Yeah. I really find joy in coaching people. One of the other ventures I have is called Kingdom Coaching Services, to where our slogan is, we prepare the lions for the jungle. So I have a real heart in just bringing that lion that's inside of each and every one of us to really pursue their passions, their abilities, unlock their unique personalities, utilize their experience, and know what their resources are to be successful. So I would say coaching, more of managing, is really where I like to be. As far as the inventing phase, being groundbreaking and pioneering, it's extremely taxing, especially having a family and other things going. So I would like to inspire others to be groundbreakers. So that way, whatever God has placed on their heart, they'll have the confidence and the courage to go out and pursue it as well.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I hope that becomes what happens for you. I think you'll do great at it. Thanks for coming in today. I really appreciate your time. I'm sure we will keep the conversation going offline.
Yes. Thank you, Kyle.
All right.